Okay, the streaming is on. Then let me share the screen for today's agenda. Here's my screen.
Yes.
Okay. I think based on today's agenda, we need to wait for Pradesh to join this meeting, and he will be joining in 15 minutes. So before that, maybe we can discuss a bit of our upcoming release. As you know that we have a plan in May this month. Basically, by end of this month, we will release notation v1.2. The major features is sign arbitrary block and timestamping support. This is the second topic. Actually, in this meeting, I would like to check the current status. And in actually, the previous release, 1.1 is end of January. So basically, we are now 3 months after 1.1. So I'm thinking that once we will align the current status about 1.2, maybe we can also thinking about a patch release, which will bump up some dependencies and include some error messages improvements by end of this month. So why I brought up this, it is because based on the 1.2 status, if we think that we cannot make it this month, maybe it's better that we can have another release to fix some dependencies so that the community and other folks who is using notation 1.1, they can get an update release for some dependency fixing and also some error message improvements. So any thoughts from participants in this meeting?
Uh, should we also release the OCI 1.1 related stuff?
Yeah, that's also planned for 1.2. But that is it's a feature, right? So according to our plan, so if everything goes smooth, by end of this month, we should be able to release 1.2 with sign blob, timestamping, and also OCI for sure. Any thoughts from Shui, Sajay, Junjie?
So the patch release were including all the bug fixes and the dependency updates, right?
Yeah.
Anything else? No?
maybe error message improvements.
Okay, so that will be extra work because the code might not be compatible, so we might not be able to cherry pick. We need a backport.
Okay.
So the deleting time will be a bit high. It's just a notice.
Okay.
I mean, should we prioritize for making sure that the release happens? I mean, error message improvements can wait also, right? But the fact is, being notation being a signing tool, we don't want to wait for package updates, and it's better to get out a release in like 2 to 3 months. So that at least a patch release.
Yeah. I think yeah, we should definitely focusing on the features for 1.2. What I'm just saying is that in case we cannot get this released by end of this month, of course we need to discuss the status for the feature and over time tracking it. But if not, it's better that we can have a patch release by end of this month. So error messages may not be mandatory, but the dependency update and the bug fixes should be in the scope for the patch release. I just saw Pritesh joined.
Hey, yeah.
Pritesh.
Hey.
Okay. I think we can get started officially. Before Pritesh joined, we just talked a bit about the second topic about the upcoming release and my thoughts about the patch release if we cannot release 1.2 on time, but we can discuss this later. Let's focus on the first topic, which is quite important for the timestamping support. So actually, last Monday we spent some time discuss the timestamping support PR. I list 3 bullets here. So last Monday we only managed to discuss the first topic, and also we have some follow-ups. And I think today we will continue the discussion, and this time Patrick will drive this discussion. Before I hand it over to Patrick, I would like to check with Pritesh whether you discuss with Meaning on the trust policy levels.
I forgot to do that. Sorry, I just forgot to skip my. I'll do it tomorrow. Let me schedule the meeting with Millen tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and please let us know any discussion results. Thank you. Patrick, I hand it over to you for driving this discussion. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Yi. Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool. So based on last week's meeting, I made some changes to the original design. So I removed the timestamp verification field. So we are not using the level anymore. Instead, I'm proposing to add a Boolean switch into signature verification to control timestamp context signature verification. And this switch is still under the authentic timestamp overall switch. And based on last week's discussion, we also removed the expiry relaxed flag. So this is the only change for timestamp verification now. And I would like to discuss the sufficient and necessary conditions for timestamping, which was not covered last week. So could you take some time to read these 5 bullets? And let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, Pritesh.
Yeah, first one makes sense. I mean, the way we have worded the requirement is either all of the certificate would be expired. Basically, leaf will expire. Either all of them are expired or leaf will expire first, because we make sure that leaf certificate is the duration of leaf certificate is under the validity of CA. Let me put it like that. So yeah, I think it makes sense. I have a question around the fourth one.
The fourth one, this one.
So when we already have authentic timestamps which can be marked skip, why do we need timestamping disabled a new parameter?
So let me show you the use cases that asked by you last week. So I guess we need to discuss these 4 use cases here. The reason to have another switch for timestamping is that use case 2, if I don't trust any third-party TSA, I'd like to skip any timestamping verification.
Yes, and you don't
But my authentic timestamp is still enforced.
Yes, in that case,
We need an extra switch to turn off timestamping verification.
If you don't have a TSA, if you don't have a trustor of type TSA configured, we won't verify this, right?
Yes, that's an implicit switch. Actually, I have replied to your suggestion here. So this is the detailed explanation of why we should have an explicit switch for timestamp verification. So the basic question is, what if I have multiple TSAs, like 10 different trusted TSAs? If I want to toggle timestamp verification, I have to delete and add those TSA records every time. So to improve the user experience, I think we should have an explicit switch that a single change will toggle the timestamp verification.
Okay. I'm trying to derive an analogy from the existing model of trustor for a normal trustor type CA, okay? If a trustor type is CA, which means, and it's empty, which means we don't trust any signature, right? We don't have an explicit flag saying that, okay, I don't trust anything, even if you verify a signature.
I would say that it's a part of the verification. It should cause the verification to fail, but not become the reason to skip the verification. So it's a step of the verification, I would say.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. But isn't it the same thing? If you don't specify, it will have the same behavior, and when introducing a flag also does the same behavior. If you don't specify a thing, we are saying we'll skip it, also this flag also does the same thing. So okay, let me ask the other way around. What happens if I don't specify a TSA without this flag?
Without which flag?
Disable, timestamp, whatever it was, I forgot.
Okay, so by
Timestamp
default,
disable,
by default, if you do not specify timestamping disabled, it's false. So we will do the timestamp verification by default in the new version of notation. If you do not specify this field, we will perform timestamp verification by default.
And if my signature is not timestamp, what will happen? As the certificates are valid right now in default
If your
mode.
pass, if your that's use case one. Yes, that's use case one. If you enable timestamping verification, but your signing certificate has not expired, then the verification will be a success. And no timestamping, because you do not have timestamp counter signature in it, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think we should remember the sufficient and necessary conditions that timestamp counter signature verification will be triggered. The first condition is you need to have at least one certificate expired. Otherwise, timestamp verification will not be triggered.
yes, in that case, the condition doesn't really matter actually then. Okay.
Yes, it's sufficient and necessary conditions.
I'm talking about the timestamp disabled field. I mean, if we say timestamp disabled equals to false, which it interprets like timestamp should always be present, but we can change the wording there. That should not be a big issue.
Do you have any suggestion on the wording?
I'm still debating about that switch. Do we really need that? Because if we don't have, I agree, it's an implicit thing. If you don't have it configured, which works, and if you want it, it's always present. I'm just trying to see when will someone go and set this as true. I'm just trying to understand the scenario when someone will go and set this value as timestamp disabled equals to true in the specifier trust store.
That's use case two. Without any trust store.
Let me go through that. I haven't read the use cases.
Yeah.
290, right? Yes. Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if I don't trust okay, when I think if I don't trust a timestamp server, I won't specify in TSA, right? That's the thing I'm coming from. Like if I don't trust any timestamp server, I won't configure it. I won't configure a TSA store type for that. It's implicit, but that's my intention. If I don't configure it, don't verify my timestamp. The second use case where you said the verifier doesn't trust a TSA, in that case, they won't configure a TSA. That looks like an explicit switch to me instead of going and marking timestamp as disabled.
This list can be a long list. It can be a length of 10 or,
yes, if I
or
don't
8.
trust, yes. So
if I want to toggle timestamping, I need to remove all of them and add them back.
That same logic goes for any other trust store, right? For example, there are 10 different trust stores. We'll have to toggle same problem exists for other trust store also. So if you think like that, that logic also applies for trust store type CA or signing authority.
It's kind of different because in CA and signing authority, you can skip the authenticity check. You are allowed to configure it in the trust policy.
But the problem,
mean, for the trust store checking, I think it should be a part of the verification. It should cause the verification to fail. It should not be the reason to skip the verification or disable the timestamping verification. This implicit kind of switch, I think it makes the trust policy hard to understand.
No, it's not implicit,
for our
right?
users.
If you don't, for example, if you're not specifying trust store of type signing authority, which means you don't trust them. For example, right now in the same policy which you provided, you haven't provided any signing authority trust store, so you don't trust that any of them.
No, it's different. The configuration is different. So for TSA, it's different from CA. So if you have a empty CA array, it can be a valid trust policy. Right? If your level for authenticity is locked, then if you do not have any CA certificates or CA trust store configured, the verification won't fail or won't be skipped because we lock the failure.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the difference between TSA and CA.
I mean,
for TSA, the authenticity is required, enforced.
I agree, but there's also line in trust policy which says it cannot be empty, right? If you specify, there should be at least, like, yes, it can be. So basically, when you specify a trust store type, when you specify a key of type trust store CA, it should have at least one value. It can be empty, the certificate cannot be there, but it has to have some value. But yes, I agree with the sentiments here, but
yeah. So that's an implementation specific. But from this spec, I'm seeing that CA and TSA are different. Just from this spec, not from any implementation point of view.
No, there's one statement in trust policy says that cannot be empty if you specify. Trust store, if you specify trust of a CA, it cannot be an empty array. There's a specification for that, but that's not the point here. It's like, if you don't trust anything, why would you specify something there? I agree with you. Like, if I don't trust any TSA, why will I specify? The second use case which you pointed out was a customer wants to flip between multiple TSAs. That's out of scope for this problem because that problem exists for trust store also. So I would say let's not focus on the second use case where you are saying like customer wants to flip between multiple TSAs. Or that's not actually the use case we're trying to solve here.
So my question for you is, why don't we want a switch, just a single switch for the timestamping? Instead, we need to go to trust store and remove the trust store records. Do you have any specific use case that's require this?
Yes, for example, as an end person, I want trust policy to be simple. And if I don't configure a TSA, I don't want it to verify that. That's the. And
I think the explicit switch is the simplest option here.
Yes, but you already have a switch of not specifying a TSA, right? Why will I specify a TSA and then mark timestamp as disabled?
Because as a user, if I want to toggle the timestamping verification, I don't want to touch the TSA trust store. Once I configured it, I can leave it there and only change the timestamping disable switch in my future usage.
Okay, that's a different problem to solve. Now we're talking about usability, and in my opinion, having a flag is much better than modifying trust. We can talk about this. Ultimately, you are modifying trust policy. Whether you modify a flag, it's modifying a file. And I think he has his hand raised.
Yeah. I just want to confirm with Pritesh. So in this screen, it's a trust policy. So, do you mean that if I want to disable timestamping checking, I just not configure the TSA in the trust store, right? You do not mean that I also need to remove the certificate file from TSA photo, right? You just simply mean
Yes.
that in this policy, we do not specify TSA the parameter and the values, right?
Yes.
Um,
Remove the TSA line, and it means it won't check.
so I'm just thinking that in this example showing in the screen, so if I want to disable timestamping checking, one way is that as Patrick explained using the additional flag. Another way is that under the trust stores parameter, I do not specify the TSA parameter. So I think for now, these two are actually overlapping, right? They have the same meaning.
Not quite. One is the switch for timestamping counter signature verification, and TSA is a part of the timestamp verification. It's a step of the verification.
Okay, so you mean
they're not exactly
Patrick, you
the
mean
same.
that this so you mean the flag actually including some other things. The TSA configured in the trust store is just a part of the timestamping checking process.
Yes. So we can agree that if you want to disable timestamping, you have to edit this file, right? This trust policy file. From my point of view, if that means I change the timestamping disabled from false to true. And for Pritesh, he will need to remove trusted TSA. He will need to remove this term. Now, if I want to reopen timestamp verification, my design is change from true to false. For Pretesh's design, the user needs to know they need to remember the trust store name and type it back, I guess, right, Pritesh?
Yes.
They both work, but I think toggling a Boolean is, oops, sorry.
Think about the cognitive load of its. So example, I'm a new user to trust policy. I need to now know about one more term. If I have any clarification of TSA, I need to read about one more documentation or one more line to read. Right? I agree. If someone already knows the trust policy, it becomes easier. If I don't know it, it becomes complicated.
I would say our trust policy is already complicated enough, right?
Yes, we don't want
Because
to be more
we need
complicated. That's what we're trying now.
comparing to the concept of level, a Boolean switch is pretty straightforward, I would say.
It's not about, it's like we don't want to make it more complicated. Yes, it is. I agree that, and we are trying to simplify that. We shouldn't make it worse. And also, if you're trying to solve a problem of disabling and enabling, that's a whole different problem if you want to solve that. If that's the idea, we can do it multiple ways. You can start supporting comments in the trust policy in JSON. If you just comment the line, you can ignore it.
So if you want to add back the trust stores, the user needs extra notation command, I guess, like notation insert list to list all the TSA trust stores and copy paste those trust stores back one by one.
No. If you want,
So,
there are different, for usability problem, there are different ways to solve. For example, right now in JSON, we don't support commenting of a statement, right? If we want that, we can start supporting the commenting of statement inside the JSON. There's RFC already for that. We can start supporting in notation if we want that feature set without introducing a new field. Does that make sense?
So, my understanding is that for the use case that Patrick list, so if I trust the TSA and I want to check validate the timestamping, then I just config I just set the TSA parameter under the trust store property, right? And if I do not trust any TSA, I just not configure the TSA parameter. So basically just leverage the existing TSA parameter as a flag, right? Yes, I also saw Shui's comment in the chat. So basically just leverage the existing TSA parameter as the flag.
I'm seeing usability issue here. Like I have a very long name or many names.
How about we start supporting comments inside the trust policy if we want to address that features that uses it. That also applies to everything else, right? For example, if I have configured TSA CN signing authority, the issue still exists right now. What if I want to trust signing authority in one verify operation and what if in another I want to trust a CA? That's a totally different use case. If we want to solve that, I am all in for having a solution for it, which applies to all other similar use cases. Just think about a scenario where a user want to say disable signing authority for trust policy and enable CA for trust policy. That's also a similar use case, right? I do see a problem there, but I think there are better ways to solve that problem for users or customers. Like for example, if we start supporting comments in the JSON, which I don't like, I don't support, but that might be a way to go for that.
Our trust policy will evolve, right, in the future. So it will evolve anyway. Like, for example, in version 1.0, we are not supporting trust source differences in the trust identity. In the version 2.0, I'm proposing this change. So what I mean, my point is, our trust policy will evolve anyway. Adding a single switch is not a complicated thing that we should avoid.
Okay,
it's explicit, it's straightforward.
Let me put it the other way around. Right now we support both CA and signing authority, right? two different kinds of trust store. Let's say a user has both. Now they want to toggle between that. Similar to your use case, where we want to toggle between signing authority, we want to toggle between signing authority. Sorry, similar to the use case where we want to toggle between trust TSA, we want to toggle between certificate authority and signing authority. That case is also valid, right? If we go down the route of supporting a new variables for every use case, then it becomes really complicated. We'll have to introduce a new variable called, let's say, CA disabled. But if we solve with a generic problem, yeah, I do recognize this as a usability problem. I'm not negating that problem doesn't exist. But we need to find a solution which applies for most the use case and which can be standardized across the trust policy.
So for this switch, it's an optional parameter though. If you do not have this timestamp disabled false, so it's by default false. So the user, I'm putting it here just to show it. If the user does not have this line, it still works. It still works.
I agree. I am not denying it.
Yeah. It says. So imagine you have a trust policy like this. Do you agree this is a good trust policy?
Yeah. Like we are
It
not adding
is,
any
right?
competition for user. No
It
new content.
is. So the user can choose to ignore this field if they don't want it.
I mean, I agree with the sentiments here. The thing is, like, I'm still struggling to find we have another knob. Why do we want to add a new knob for this? We already have one control which by default says I don't trust any timestamp.
I mean, look at this trust policy document. It's a valid trust policy. I'm not seeing any complicated thing in it, right?
Yes,
And
you're
by
interested.
default, timestamping verification is performed.
No, it's not. If I don't configure a TSA, it won't be performed, right? If I don't configure a TSA, what will be the behavior?
It will be performed, but failed at this step. It will be performed. By the way, it will be the first check. It will be the first step of the validation. It will be performed, and the first step is checking this TSA trust store. If it is not configured, fail this step.
Yes.
So from implementation's view, it's the same.
Okay, let me put it the other way around. If I don't have TSA configured and I say disable trust timestamp equals to false, does your behavior changes? Will you throw an error for the customer for this use case? It's invalid trust policy, right? If I don't have a TSA configured and timestamp disabled equals to false, which you are saying perform a timestamp verification when I don't trust any TSA, which means it is bound to fail in almost all situations. Unless you do a skip or logged, right? If I have a strict mode on, level strict, and I say, I don't trust the TSA, I don't have this, it will always fail. I mean, I think we can vote on this. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to build consensus on this.
Do others have comments, suggestions, questions on this topic? Let's have a vote.
Should we list this in PR? So, yeah, my understanding on pretest proposal is leveraging the existing parameter, so that we can do this similar for C and the sign authority. If I do not specified value, it means I do not trust. The cons part of this is that user need to, if user want to toggle it, right? User need to add all those store back. This is the cons part of this proposal. The pros is that we do not introduce any new flag, and also can reduce the current parameter for say and sign authority as well. This is the Pradesh proposal.
So I think the ultimate question here is that by default, do we want to verify the timestamping signature if it's present and the signing certificate expired?
I think
I think it's yes.
Yeah, I think by default we should check that.
Yeah, by default, yes. We want that.
British Sergey, do you have any opinions on this one?
I agree there. We should check for timestamp by default.
So by default, that's
If TSA is configured.
okay. So in that case, what's the default trust policy looks like?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So because we say by default means even the trust policy is not well configured, but as long as it's accepted as a valid trust policy, we should verify the TSA certificates anyway. So that means, for example, Patrick can remove the line 232. Okay, so we remove it. So that means the trust store is no longer there anymore. So in that case, should we verify any verify any timestamping signatures by default or not?
we should. I think we should. If by default we want timestamping verification, then we should.
Why would we do that? I'm confused. There is no indication of timestamping anywhere. So why would we validate the timestamp?
I agree. Let me be the other way around. What will you do with the result of timestamp? Because I don't trust any signature, the timestamp
Right.
signature.
But do you need to remove this line as well?
That's a different conversation. Let's remove it for time being. That's a different conversation we can have. Let's remove line number 235 also.
Yeah, so Patrick, can you remove the line 235? So let's discuss it just through the trust policy so we can have a conclusion in this meeting. Okay, so now we have this trust policy. What's the behavior of this trust policy? Should we verify any timestamping signatures if present? Assuming the
if it satisfies the sufficient and necessary conditions that I listed for timestamping verification, then yes. By default, we would like to continue the verification instead of fail it immediately.
So British Sergey, any inputs here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to understand. This is what our current trust policy looks like, right? But are you planning to do version 2? Is that what we're going to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you can break the behavior.
Yes.
Yeah.
This will be
go ahead.
a valid default version 2 policy also. This will be a valid
right. So the question is whether we should look at the trust the TSA signatures, right? And let's say, and there are a couple of, what does the decision tree look like? We have determined that the signature is valid, but we have no trustors defined here. And the second one is we don't have a valid signature, and should we allow that to be verified?
Okay, so just let me have some input. So for this trust policy, anyway, the time if the signing certificate is expired, it will fail anyway.
Yes.
Yes. So the difference is that if we always attempt the timestamp verification, we will have some outgoing request to check the revocation of the timestamping certificate. So it will
Yes.
impact the performance and also other things like the networking stuffs. Uh, and also it also impacts the error message returned to the user. So if we attempt verifying the timestamp signatures, the error message will be like the timestamp signatures are not trusted because its root authority is not in the trust store. If we don't attempt, then the error message will be something like uh, signing certificate.
Signature. Well, yeah, and TSA not verified.
TS95 will not be shown because it's not configured.
Yeah,
So
I think it's okay to show that, or do you not want to divulge anything that's in the trust policy?
it will
I think,
not show because it's not configured, so it will not show because it's never attempt.
yeah, okay. I mean, I'm fine either way. I mean, in the end, what we're saying is that if there is no configuration here, there is no outbound call for TSA.
So we need to choose one behavior so we can continue this this process.
Yeah, Pritesh, are we kind of like leaning to no TSA indication in the configuration means no outbound calls to TSA or no verification paths executed on the TSA?
I mean, yeah, why do we want to do a throwaway work? Because even if I do a computation, it won't be of any use.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think we just want to kind of like get it in like in some kind of agreement that no TSA defined here means the TSA path will not be touched.
Yep, that's my take. Yeah.
Okay, so no outgoing requests.
Sure, does
Yeah.
that seem reasonable?
Okay, so in that case, so I can conclude that in this case, so when TSA is not configured, that means the timestamping feature is disabled.
Yeah, there's no concept of enabling a feature without having any valid configuration. So configuration presence is the only way that the feature is turned on. Might be reasonable.
Okay, now back to Patrick. It's your turn.
So, so what's the conclusion here?
So the conclusion is that if the TSA in the trust store is not configured, it implies that the timestamping feature is disabled.
So are you suggesting that we do not need this field?
Yes. If we really need that, we can add it later, maybe in 2.1, maybe.
So my question is, if we remove this, it means it disables the timestamping. Should we
Yes.
also remove this line?
Yes, you can also remove that line.
Also, let's talk about that line.
That's the question. If we want to, if the timestamping was enabled and I want to disable it, what should I do if we don't have this line? What should I do? I need to remove it, remove from trust store and remove from trust identity, right? And
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to reopen it, I need to add both of them back.
I think that's okay because we can always back up the trust policy file.
Let's talk about 237 number. Why do we need that line, PSA star? What's the use case for that?
It's
I
trust
think
identity.
that's obviously we don't want to trust any
It's
TS.
just an example. It's just an example. I
So
can have a specific value here, right?
yes, problem with this is usually TSAs are third party operated or outside the signing authority or certificate authority, right? Even if it's in the same organization, it should be ideally be governed by a different set, or that should be a separate service,
Yes.
which should not talk to CA,
Yes.
ideally. In that case, if you trust a TSA, why won't you? And they can rotate the certificate on their own. You have no control over it. You just request a TSA, please sign something. They can issue a certificate from the trusted root. They can have whatever name they want.
So
And they
you're
can,
suggesting removing this field from trust identities?
yes. Yep.
I don't think so because your scenario is optimized for the public TSAs. What about the private TSAs?
Even with private TSA, let's say I'm using a paid plan of some TSA, right? As far as I know, the agreement says it will chain to that route. They don't provide any guarantee about what would be in the certificate. But with
What about internal TSAs? So it's not a third party one, it's a first party one.
in TSA, why? Okay,
And also having a TSA here, so it's like a fine-grained trust identities, and the users won't have any additional knowledge to learn because he or she already knows that how CA and signing authority works.
yes. So
So having a extra thing saying that, okay, we don't configure TSA means TSA is something like star. Actually, it's cause more learning curve for the users because it's a special case.
yes, but think about a scenario. Does TSA issues? So in CA line number 236, we have X509 subject because CA issues you a certificate, and that certificate is based on the fields you provide, right? In CSR, you provide this field, and then TSA gives the certificate. So you actually control that field, right? For doing sign operation and everything. Because you got a certificate, these are the values which I requested, so that value will match. But on line 237, in TSA, we don't get a certificate. TSA on their own decide what certificate, what values of their subject should be.
Yeah.
And
So
it doesn't
for
control
public
that.
TSA, yes, it is. That's why we have a star there. But for private TSA, we have control because it's private.
I mean, if TSA is operated by same service, it doesn't really helps because it doesn't provide, it has to be a different service. Like the whole idea of TSA and CA being different is to have two source of truth, basically, right? So
Pardon?
not to, I will take that. To have trust in two different organizations, right?
Wait a second. Not two organizations. It can be in the
Two
same
entities.
organization,
Two
but
entities.
are
Let's say
two
two entities.
different units,
Two different
right?
entities. Yes, two different entities. By
Yeah,
just
but
of
they are same in the same
yes,
organization. That means
yes.
they
Two
may
different.
have the same root authority.
They may have the same root cert, right?
Yes,
But the trust identity here is the subject of the leaf cert.
Yes, and
So
TSA doesn't issue a certificate to you. In what case you want to pin on the subject of a timestamp authority leave certificate? What's the use case for that? Why do you want to pin on that?
it's because the same CA, the root CA may have multiple timestamping services.
And do you trust only one of them?
Yes, I maybe just want to trust one of them because in a private scenario it can. But as you know, for the public ones, we just trust Star because we trust everything. It depends on it depends on the trust policy. That's why we need a trust policy here, right? Because different organization has different situations. They might need to configure their own stuff.
I agree, but not trusting one TSA inside an organization while doing other with change to the same route sounds wrong. I will tell you why. If I have a root access, I can issue that leaf certificate the same thing. Why will you want to trust that? I'm still struggling with that. If
You are assuming that the root CA is compromised, but
no,
in
it's not
the
compromised. Same. Let's say there are two entities within the same enterprise using the two or operating two different TSAs.
yes.
If they use the same route, they might end up with same leaf. There's no extra guarantee unless you are saying I trust both the TSAs to do the right thing. In that case, anyway, you're trusting them.
Well, why do they have the same leaf? They
They
don't.
can. Why not? Unless you're specific
Yeah,
you're targeting.
if they can, then it's a violation. So that cert will be revoked. Revoked, and uh, one of the CA will be something like be audited, and maybe they will have a racial perspective in their own team, saying why they have the same cert.
Yes. Yes, that's the
So
reason you might want to have a different route itself. I'm trying to do a
yeah,
scenario where
so, but it's not avoidable if for CA, because for example, two CA can still assign the same certificate, right?
uh
Because
yes
your
and
problem
no.
is not specific to TSA. It's your problem can also apply to the CA part.
The CA is different. In CA, it made sense to have line 236 because end user controls that. In 237, end user doesn't controls it. But if you're saying in
Okay.
organization,
So your point here is that the only difference between TSA and CA is that the end user can control it or not.
yeah,
But for the private TSA, the end user can actually control the certificate, because for private TSA, users has more abilities to choose
you
what. Just like your signing authority, for example, in the AWS signer, they can also choose which certificate to sign with. So
they cannot. They should not be able to do it because if they can choose which certificate, then why then that TSA is controlled by the who is signing, which doesn't make sense. If I control a CA, then the timestamp thing doesn't make sense actually because I can. That's the same problem I have right now. If I control a TSA, I can change the time on the TSA and sign with the
no,
expire.
you are not fully control the TSA, but controlling the not control, but to choose uh one of the available certificates. So it's not like a full control. So it's different.
Uh, okay.
If you have the full control, obviously it's not secure anymore.
To
But
be,
it's just to choose, it's different.
can we actually document this use case because I would like to understand the use case here and just to be open. If it's a real world use case, I don't have any problem. But if it's hypothetical, we should document this. Because
Uh,
I cannot see a
yeah.
use case inside the organization where there are two TSAs being operated with the same route and I want to pin on the leaf. And I trust one operating CA and I do not other trust other operating CA or TSA basically. Because
So so basically, the use case for specifying identity for TSA is for the private TSAs. For public ones,
no, even in
the-
private, want to understand a use case where a two TSA uses the same route, but I don't trust one service and I trust other service. Because if you don't trust one service, and I will
for example,
why?
there's a corporation, but they have different companies or even different teams under those
Then you don't want to share
organizations.
the root. If you
And
don't
yes,
want
they
to
share the same root, but the teams why that they don't trust each other. It's okay because if one team is compromised, it won't affect the other team. So it's
it
kind
will.
of security isolation.
It will because root is same. That's what I'm saying.
Root, yes, the root is, I mean, the root is more it's more secured. It has a higher secure level than other
Yes.
certificates.
You'll have to go off a problem of revocation or the different, that's a bigger problem to handle. Like if you have this model, then I would say there might be a bigger problem to handle. Because
Why?
now we're talking about potential revocation of all CAs and everything.
No, it's different. So
Compromise. If you don't
so
trust it.
for regular users, they just need that 237 line. That's a TSA. It's stop. That's the
No,
for the
because
most users.
yes, for example, if you don't trust that service, you should not be affected by a compromise of that service, right? If you don't trust that TSA at all, you shouldn't be affected by compromise of that TSA.
Yeah, but so
And you are.
okay. So let's go back to the original design of the trust identity. Why we need trust identities?
Okay, let me talk about that. We need
Yeah.
that for public CAs. We talked about this was only feature mostly should be used by only public CAs where they issue from the same route and the end user gets to decide what OUC, basically the subject they get, and they can pin on it. And they can renew the certificate with the same subject so that it continues to work for end customers and signer and verifier both. That was the use case for trusted identities initially when we added the
Yeah.
major
So
use case.
yeah. So what make the TSA special?
In TSA, we don't control it. End user doesn't control TSA. End user does control signing certificate. So
But
trusted is of signing certificate and end user does control that. That's
for
where
how about the private TSAs?
That's what I'm saying. Even in private TSA, this is like trusted identity use case mostly applies for public. That's what where we when we introduce the feature. Yes, it can be extended for private CAs also, but we don't really see a need of that. It can be, we are not denying it. But for TSA, the problem is, as an end user, I shouldn't have an influence on a TSA. That's the whole trust model for TSA.
I don't know why. Is there any references for that?
If I have an influence over TSA, I can have a similar attack which I can execute. I can influence a TSA to back the timestamp for me. There is no reference document, I agree there. But what I'm saying is let's at least document a real world use case for line 237.
Because for me, I'm not convinced because the end user first they can choose which TSA to timestamping with, but I cannot understand that why they cannot choose the which available certificate to sign to timestamping with.
Internally, you can do it, but why with same route? I have a question that. If it's the same route, how does it matters?
Yeah, yes,
So I have a use case here. So suppose that there's a big company, right? The company has a single root cert, and the company has 3 organizations with 3 TSAs for each of them, and all those TSAs trace to the same company root cert. And as an employee of organization A, I only trust organization A's TSA. So even though I have the company's root cert in the TSA Trust Store, I need to have my organization A's TSA Trust Identity listed under the Trust Identity list. In that case, I won't be verifying timestampings from organization B and organization C. That's one use case.
Okay, let me put it the way around.
Yeah.
How will you stop? Like, because you don't trust organization B, right? We established that we only trust organization A. We don't trust organization B and C. That's a background, right? That's
Um, I'm
You
not
don't trust.
trusting organization B and C's TSA.
Yes, you don't trust TSAs, right?
Yeah.
You don't trust them operating a TSA. How can you trust them? How can you trust them not to issue a leave certificate with the same subject used as a timestamp and certificate basically? Why will you trust them for that? If you don't trust an organization to operate a TSA.
Can you repeat your
Yeah.
question?
For example, let's say there are
Yeah.
two organizations A and B. You trust organization A, you don't trust B, right?
Yeah.
If you don't trust B, how will you trust them not to have and leave certificate with the same subject as that of organization A? Because you don't trust the TSAs. So how can you trust the operation of the TSA not to have same leave certificate with the same subjects? Does that make sense?
My question here is that your question is not specific to TSA. It also can apply to the CA. So, for example, a root CA has two intermediate CAs, and what if those two intermediate CAs issue two certificates with the same subject? It's also possible, right? And what if you want to just trust one of them instead of another one? You have no choices.
The
So
way
basically, you are questioning the original design
no,
of trust laws and trust identities
no,
because it does not have a trust path.
originally it was designed, the feature was designed for public CAs which are audited and everything. That trusted identity was originally introduced for public CAs which are audited.
Yeah, that's a good point. So basically, you are mentioning that all certificate generation has a audit, something
No,
like
we are not. We are not saying. I'm just
a CT, right? That's the certificate transparency.
so that was the only way to support it for public CAs. If we had any better mechanism, we should add that. I don't deny it, but we couldn't find any better mechanism to trust a certificate issued from public CA. That's why we introduced that concept.
Okay, so in order to just to close this meeting, so what's the suggestion on the trust identities for TSAs?
I would say if we have a real world use case which actually works, we should add it. If not, we can remove it and add it later when we actually have the use case.
So are you suggesting that we can remove the line to 37, and when the TSA is not configured for the trust identities, it means stop?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, at least we have a conclusion for now. Patrick, what's your comment?
I don't think that's the conclusion, though. And so in our already released 1.0.0 spec, we already have this TSA option. Oh no, actually we don't. So in the 1.0.0 spec, we only have a string of subject, which can be a CA or or TSA or signing authority.
Yeah, that might have been message. Yeah.
So Pritesh suggests we should remove this, and in that case, so from my original design, I'm also thinking about this. We should split C and signing authority for trust identity. Do you think that's a valid, Pritesh?
And no, I will just consider it as the same thing unless, so I would say unless we have a use case where we want to differentiate it, let's just keep it what we have right now, which works for both the use cases, right? So right now we have a single string, right?
So
Which works.
basically, you are saying that we don't need this version 2.0 at all.
Yes. Yep.
So you want to stick with version 1.0
Yes, unless we have
for
a
timestamping.
yes, unless we have a specific use case, I'm ready to move it. But if we don't have it, let's be backward
So
compatible.
basically, your suggestion is for timestamping verification, we do not touch trust policy.
Yep.
Just a question. It's not related to the timestamping here. It's about the types of the trust identities. So the reason we have the 2.0 and with the trust identity separated for the C and signing authority is that we do see a security vulnerability by an purely analysis. I mean by pure analysis. We don't have a use case or attack scenario, but I mean a real attack scenario, but it's attackable in theory. So that's why we want to enhance that and to split the ambiguity of the trust identity into CA and authority and the signing authority.
I think for signing authority, we do verify trusted identity or we don't. I think we do enforce it, specify
Okay.
them.
So the problem here is that currently the trust identity is mixed. So it does not indicate the trust identity belongs to a CA type or a signing authority type. So if the trust store has only CA type trust store config, it's okay because it's CA type. If it only have signing authority configured, it's signing authority. It's okay because the most use case are like that. It has a single trust type. But the problem is that what if the user want to configure two types of the trust store? For example, in the trust store, the user configured the CA type trust store, also configure the signing authority trust store. So in that case, the trust identity is ambiguous. So from notation, it cannot identify the same trust identity belongs to which kind of or which type of the trust store.
Right now, it applies to both. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So the thing is here is that it's never documented, and we don't know which one is the desired behavior.
Then we should document. Let's open an issue for that. If it's not,
Okay.
we should document that.
So because we are not that familiar with the signing authority, so can you confirm of that it's intended that the trusted identity shall be shared by both types of trust stores.
Let me take an action item on that. Intended behavior.
Okay, so you will discuss that with meaning, right?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, thank you very much.
So there
Okay,
are
so if we can confirm with that, then I think we don't have any issue with trust identities anymore. So now back to the back to the switch. I'm sorry. So we are suggesting that we are using the TSA, right? We are suggesting that we are using the trust store type TSA as a switch for timestamp verification, basically.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, although I'm not convinced by that because I think it's a usability issue, but since more people agree with pre-attach, I will change it to use TSA trust store type as a switch.
also, if you want, we can always introduce a new variable in future. if people start complaining about it, we can always add a new value, new parameter here.
Yeah, I think we can start with this, and as Pritesh mentioned, if later our user is asking for this, we can add it. And also, Shui previously also mentioned for the usability issue, it can be handled that user can make a copy of the trust policy
Well,
for
as a
including
developer, I think I'm also a user of it. I think I count as a user of this. When I'm testing with my trusted TSAs, I have many trusted TSAs. So if I want to toggle this, I have to remove and retype all those TSA in this long list.
Shui suggests a way that we can make a copy of the trust policy file and import it.
Yeah, that's
The file. Yeah, that's one way
that's
that
hard
can
to use.
improve the experience. So I think for the flag, we basically reach alignment that we will use the TSA parameter as a flag, and we will later see if any feedback from users, then we can consider using additional flags
Oh,
as
I'm seeing another problem here, but okay. So if we don't want version 2.0, in version 1.0, our trust store looks like this. That means I need to find all the TSA records here. Okay. Like I have to here. So to control this, I need to find all those records in this list and remove it.
So typically, we don't expect users to have like hundreds or tens of these values. Typically, to configure trust store and you
Yeah,
just put
203 are normal, right? If I trust AWS, I trust Microsoft, I trust DigiCert, that's already 3 TSAs. So okay.
you can have
Since
multiple
more
insert.
people agree with this option, I will go for it.
Also there are other way here. You can have multiple certificates inside the same trust store. You can have all the CAs which you trust in one and group them as one. And you can have other one as second group. You can still group the certificates which you trust or TSA.
That's a different story though. If one TSA is compromised, I need to go to the trust store to
Yes.
remove it.
Yep. That's
That's
the
a different
downside of it.
story.
Yep.
Yeah, but okay.
And sorry, I need to draw.
Pritesh, will you talk to Meaning about the verification level and also the trust identity?
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, so that please get back to us tomorrow or as soon as you can, so that we can conclude it.
Yeah.
As you know that yeah, we have planned this feature for the release in this month, right? So it's better that we can conclude this as soon as possible.
Yep, we'll do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Yi, have you write down the action items in the meeting notes?
Not yet, but I will summarize it and send it out.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. Thanks, folks.